So today I'm going to talk about these portable solar panels and how you can tell if one is wired in series or if it's wired in parallel. So this rule applies to 100 watts to 150 watt panels. And I don't know about the bigger ones, if it applies to them or not, but it does apply to these. Like 99% of the time, this is the rule. And the reason why it's the rule is they have to get the voltage up to a certain amount to produce the most amount of power. So that's why it does this. So in this case, this is the all powers, and I'm going to tell you, I didn't get this thing sponsored or anything. I paid my hard-earned money for this, and when you pay your own money, you want to get the best thing possible for the lowest price possible. So that's the reason why I got this. It was pretty cheap, and I got it because it's 120 watts, and I got an MPPT charge controller that does 120 watts of power. So it's a 10 amp charge controller. So I wanted to get the most I could get out of it. But anyway, let me show you how you can tell if these are series or parallel. And by the way, you want to get a parallel because if it's parallel, then when you get some panels that have shadow on it, I'll show you right now. So let's say that panel has some shadowing on it from the trees. So if you have a parallel panel, you can still produce power if one of these panels is shadowed. And let's say this one has got trees shadowing it. I can still get 60 watts of power out of this panel. And if I have one, then I can get 3/4 of power out of it. So that's why I really think if you're going to be camping a lot where there's trees or things that are going to shadow these panels, then you should get a parallel wired panel. You can get a series one if you're in the middle of the desert all the time, then a series is just fine. Now, the way you can tell if these are series wired or parallel wired is, and like I said, this is 99% of the time, if it has 4 panels, it's wired in parallel. If it has 3, it's wired in series. And the reason why they do that is because if it's 3, they're not getting a high enough voltage to run it in a parallel set. So they run 4, and then they can get that. So that's the reason why that is. Now let me show you hooking this thing up and how it's going to work. Okay, so we're going to show you how to hook these things up real quick. So I use a MPPT charge controller, and I hook it up right here. Now you always hook it up to the battery first because you don't want to put solar into these MPPT or a PWM charge controller without having an output source for it to go out, or you could fry these things. So always hook it up to the battery first, and everything checks out. We are at about 75% charge on the battery. So I'm going to plug this thing in, and now the solar panel is plugged in, and the MPPT charge controller is going to start figuring out how many amps we're going to get out of the sun today. So it's a little bit cloudy right now. We're getting about 2.7 amps of power at 13.4 volts. So hopefully it clears up a little bit. And there we go. We're getting a little more sun. We are at 6.1 now times 13.8 volts. And that's the wattage that you're going to be pushing into it. Now we're going to do a quick test on the parallel panels to make sure it works. So I'm going to cover up one of these panels, and my voltage dropped to 4.9 amps now. So let me uncover it, and we're back up to 6.2 amps of power coming in. So you can see a parallel panel, if you cover one up, a tree covers it up, you're still going to get 3/4 of your power coming in to your RV. If you're doing this in the desert, then you can get a series panel. It's not an issue because you're not going to get, a panel blocking from a tree or something like that. So that pretty much summarizes, how to tell if you have a parallel panel or a series panel, and what the benefits and the cons are, with each of those panels. And like I said, I bought the all powers. I just want you to know that it's a good panel, and go out there and get a good panel. Don't buy one of those cheap flimsy things, because within a year it's going to break on you and you're going to be all mad. And get something that's got some toughness to it, but it's also not going to break the bank. So That's what we're all about. But anyway, we'll see you next episode.